Hey everybody, Dirili here. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of Hakuouki Demon of the Fleeting Blossom. Remember, this is my uncut, unprofessional channel, so if you want to hear better recordings, listen to my main channel please, link in the description below. But those are different titles, so for now we'll continue on Sanosuke's route. You can just sit back, relax, and let me read you a story. Ito could be a very peculiar person. No, he's a jerk. The two men left the room, chatting together as if nothing was wrong, and all eyes turned toward Sanan.
Sanan, don't listen to that asshole, okay?
Sanan said nothing. He stood up silently and left the room.
Man, I feel bad for him. Even the men are avoiding him these days.
Oh, is it everybody pitying him? You guys stop pitying him. You need to, like I said, do some tough love. What? It was the first I'd heard of such a thing. But then again, I didn't normally see anyone but the captains. I had no idea.
Well, he's been kind of a jerk lately. I imagine that's why.
It wasn't hard for me to see why they would feel that way. Sanan had gotten even worse in the last several weeks.
He wasn't always like that, you know. Back in the day, he was always acting like he was looking out for everybody. Yeah, he was real nice, at least on the surface. Nothing left of that now.
Do you really mean that? The way they spoke, it sounded as if any kindness Sanan had shown was always a facade. No, I think his pride has been hurt and he's feeling sorry for himself and taking it out on everybody. If only we could date him and make him feel better.
What the hell does Kondo see in that Ito guy?
Okita and Hijikata had largely ignored Nagakura and Harada, but their faces were dark and stormy. It wasn't difficult to guess why.
How the hell would I know? Probably just pull the wool over Kondo's eyes with some well-spoken bullshit. Then, why don't you go get rid of him, Hijikata? Tell him that Shinsengumi doesn't need him.
Hijikata let out a frustrated sigh and pinched the bridge of his nose.
No way Kondo will go for that. He adores Ito.
Seriously?
Besides, when he joined, he brought a bunch of men with him. You think they won't make a stink if we kick him out?
Hijikata was right. We didn't like it any more than Okita did, but they were in a tight spot.
Well, damn. Aren't you supposed to be the demon? The commander from hell? You're supposed to make the impossible happen. Fine, Soji. How about we make you commander? Then you can kick Ito and his guys out, right? Hell no. That's way too much trouble.
Lazy. He gave a grin and he laughed, but when he finished, he sighed and his face fell. It looked like everyone was unhappy with Ito, but none of them knew quite what to do about him. Do you dislike Ito too, Saito? I noticed earlier that he kept quiet while the others commiserated, and I was curious what he thought. He looked at me for a moment, then spoke. As an organization grows, it will expand to include people who have differing ideas and points of view. Then, was he supporting Ito's appointment to deputy commander? I was about to ask when he continued speaking. However, if one attempts to force his sort of diversity, then the organization will begin to rot from within. His words hung in the air, a dark omen for the future of the Shinsengumi. It was considered of Ito to join, but its presence seemed to be a recipe for dissension, if not outright disaster. The setting sun glowed through the windows with a warm, rich red, and we decided to move outside in the hope that it might raise our spirits. It's cold. Despite the sun, it seemed that spring was still far away. I wasn't too fond of Ito, but it was Sanan and his condition that truly worried me. I really wish his arm would just heal. That arm, or perhaps more accurately the lack of it, had been the source of his change in personality. Still, as nice as it would be for Sanan's arm to simply start working again, that seemed like the stuff of a child's fable, not real life. That was when I remembered.
Push comes to shove. He'll have to take it. I don't think Sanan is just going to give up. Don't jinx him, Soji. It's going to look bad if the officers start joining the Corps.
The Shinsengumi had some sort of something. I didn't know what it did exactly, or even what sort of thing it was, but From the way they all talked about it, there was some manner of very unpleasant side effects. No, wait, I do remember something. Yes, from what I heard, it seemed that it had the capacity to heal wounds and had something to do with the core. And it's also something I'm not supposed to know about. If they learned how much I'd picked up, or what I put together on my own, I had no doubt I would be in serious trouble. It was possible that they would even kill me. Still, if I could figure any of it out, perhaps I could do something to help. I am the daughter of a well-educated doctor, after all. But am I educated at all in that? I'd like to think that I have a little knowledge of medicine than the average person. The question remained, then what should I do? Oops, I gotta go back to my walkthrough. I should return to my room, because I guess Sanen's not very close to Harada, so he's not important to me in this route. Sorry, Sanen. Perhaps it would be best just to return to my room. I didn't want to get in trouble for wandering around, and I didn't want to find myself in anyone's way. I'll just stay here. It was rather dull, certainly, but better a dull evening than the alternative. Yep, probably. It's probably wise. Just as the sun dipped below the horizon, the compound exploded with activity. Again? Had something happened? I waited for a few moments for the activity to settle down, but it did no such thing. Something was wrong. I could feel it. I struggled against it for as long as I could, but eventually my curiosity got the better of me. There must be someone in the common room. I can ask them.
To think that Sanen would have done this to himself. Didn't I tell you not to let him out of your sight? Was some part of that difficult for you to understand?
Hijikata's voice echoed out from the common room, quietly furious. I tried to get their attention, but instinct had driven me to the very corner of the room, and they neither saw nor heard.
I did see him leave his room, but come on, how was I supposed to know he was going to do this? He was in charge of this stuff, so he could have got it easy, sure enough, but he didn't look like he was carrying anything.
Nogakuro was angry, certainly, but it wasn't all directed outward.
I guess we wouldn't have known if he'd taken away any, huh? I mean, I suppose there's a chance that the treatment would heal his arm, but it didn't work, did it? Everybody who took it went crazy.
At last I began to understand. Sanen had taken some of whatever treatment it was the Shinsengumi were so desperate to keep secret.
I believe Colonel Sanen has been working on improving it. He hoped to repair his arm before it had deteriorated too far. Perhaps he felt he was finished, or at least close enough.
He gave a small shrug.
Whatever the case, when he realized that he had failed, he ignored Soji's counsel on attempted suicide.
Suicide? The words were past my lips before I even thought of them. Great. As one, all eyes in the room turned toward me.
Just what the hell are you doing here?
It was an accusation, not a question. The longer his cold gaze kept me pinned, the tighter my throat became, until I could barely breathe, let alone speak. The strange combination of anxiety, suspicion, and animosity that I had felt before, on the night I had first come to the headquarters of the Shinsengumi. Now, as then, I understood the meaning of that gaze. They were deciding whether or not to kill me. Again.
Toshi, I think it's about time you told her what was going on. She's Kodo's daughter, after all. She has a right to know.
And for all you guys know, I might know something about my father's research, which I don't, but, you could always wonder. I felt my eyes go wide at the mention of my father's name. Hijikata's gaze slid to Kondo, and he looked as if he'd eaten something unpleasant. Again? He likes to make that face often, apparently. After a moment, however, he gave a long, exasperated sigh, and turned back to me.
The Shinsengumi doesn't need you.
What?
There's a chance you'll help us find Kodo, but even without your help, we'll find him eventually. A minor setback at worst.
Although it wasn't their primary duty, the Shinsengumi had the watch for when a manhunt was necessary. Someone who knew the target, such as myself, would make their job easier, but that was all. I was no more valuable than a means to an end, and one of questionable value at that. He was right. They didn't need me.
You do anything weird, we'll kill you. I'm about to tell you what's going on here, but keep in mind that your life is in our hands.
I'd never forgotten it. I swallowed. Then, you aren't going to kill me? Hijikata narrowed his eyes.
We aren't going to kill you yet, but don't think that you're in the clear.
Oh. It was a sort of acceptance. I was glad. I supposed that I wasn't going to be killed, but I was still far from happy. I'd been with the Shinsengumi for nearly a year, and my position with them hadn't changed. It shouldn't have surprised me, but for some reason the truth cut deep.
We've never told you, but Kodo was here because he was developing a treatment.
You mean... I chose my words carefully. The one that Sanin took? When Kondo nodded, it was as if there was a great weight resting on him.
It was the first brought to us by one of our shogun's men.
He explained that the concoction was said to have come originally from the west. Apparently, the shogunate had ties to countries across the ocean.
It was a foreign drug of sorts that would tremendously augment a man's strength and ability to heal.
Moreover, he continued, it had the capability to increase a man's strength tenfold, though the increased strength would make him slower. It also granted incredible healing powers, but piercing the heart or brain would still kill.
But all of this came at a cost, the mind of any man who drank the concoction.
It made sense now that I thought about it. That must have been what they meant by bloodlust.
It was Kodo who experimented on the warriors of the Shinsengumi in an attempt to improve the drug. By diluting it, he was able to reduce the madness it brought to a more manageable level.
My father was experimenting on people? I suspected that my father had been involved in whatever the Shinsengumi had been hiding from me, but to discover that he had been experimenting on people, making them go mad, it was almost too much to bear. Then, that night in the alley... Harada nodded.
We keep the guys who've taken it in the Maikawa house. So long as they don't get any blood, they stay pretty calm.
If they were powerful, but lacked any skill or technique, then it was a simple thing for the captains to deal with those who got out of line.
The shogun's man told us we were supposed to keep all this under wraps.
In the Yagi house, we lived side by side with the Yagi family, which meant the rank-and-file soldiers weren't allowed to live there as well. The Maikawa family, by contrast, had fled their house as soon as the Shinsengumi had arrived, making it the perfect place to conceal the soldiers who'd gone mad.
All right, we've told her enough. We need to think about Sanin.
His words made it clear that my education was at an end.
He managed to refine it after Kodo left, so there's a chance he won't lose it. Well, yeah, but, I mean, look at him. He's practically dead.
That's right. Hadn't Sanin tried to kill himself?
Well, if that crap actually does what it's supposed to, then that cut isn't going to kill him.
Hijikata's voice was low, almost a growl. Even from across the room, I felt like I could hear his teeth grinding.
Kondo, can you keep an eye on him? Tonight's going to tell if he lives or dies, or go crazy. Very well. Soji is with him, right?
Kondo nodded toward Hijikata as he stood, and made his way toward Sanin's room.
Don't let anyone near Sanin's room, especially Ito's men.
Ito and his men weren't terribly fond of the shogun, so it stood to reason that Hijikata wouldn't want them finding out about the shogunate's secret experiments. Even apart from that, however, it was clear that Hijikata and the rest of the captains trusted Ito about as far as they could throw him.
Shinpachi, go check on the Maikawa house. Got it.
As he passed, Nagakura's eyes met mine for an instant, and I saw in them the same hostility I felt the night I arrived.
Saito, I want you in the inner courtyard. If Ito and his guys show up, keep them occupied. Sanosuke, go keep an eye on the rest of the men.
Saito and Harada nodded. At last, Hijikata turned to look at me.
You, go with one of the captains. I don't care who.
All right. In other words, he wanted to make sure I was supervised. Reasonable, I suppose, given the situation. But who did I want to go with? You know who I want to go with. That's right, you!
Stay out of the Maikawa house, Chizuru. They get kind of rowdy at night.
Nagakuro, who was on his way to the Maikawa house, where the men who'd taken the shogunate's concoction were kept. It didn't really sound like somewhere I'd wanted to go. That left the inner courtyard with Saito, or the outside with Harada. Hijikata hadn't said differently. I assumed he would remain in the common room. So I will go outside, of course. I will go to you, Harada. The cold night air was harsh in my throat, but after the excitement earlier, cooling my head a bit seemed like a good idea.
Cheer up, Chizuru.
He gave me a grin and a friendly nudge on the shoulder. Thanks. It was a small gesture, but I couldn't deny it made me feel a little better.
Still, Hijikata wasn't kidding. Make sure you don't go do something stupid and get yourself killed, alright?
Yes, right.
That's really something about Sanen, huh? I guess he was doing pretty bad lately, though.
Yes. There wasn't much else I could say. I wasn't one of them, after all. Who knows how much they would tolerate me meddling in their affairs.
I'm hoping he'll make it, but then again, if he dies, I guess it won't matter much, huh?
He gave a short laugh, and then was silent for a while. Hadn't Harada tried to kill himself too long before I met him?
As long as you're still breathing, the world's your oyster. If he doesn't make it, he'll still be breathing, but that stuff will change.
He was doing his best to be calm and nonchalant, but he couldn't hide the current of worry in his voice. What's going to happen to him? To Sanen, I mean. Instead of an answer, I got another grin and a pat on the head.
It'll be alright. Don't worry. We'll figure something out.
I sensed the conversation was over and was silent, but worry continued to follow me like a cloud. But at least I'm with a nice guy. At long last, morning came. One by one, the captains returned to the common room, tired and bleary-eyed from their long night. It was Inoue's entrance that broke the silence.
He seems to have made it through the hardest part.
The room breathed a silent sigh of relief.
He's still asleep. Looks pretty peaceful. So, has Sanen gone crazy?
Inoue simply shook his head.
We don't know for sure until he wakes up, but he looks just like he always has.
And that was when the door slid open.
Good morning, everyone.
The tension that had relaxed at Inoue's entrance pulled tight as a drum. At least, I thought, they don't do this when I just walk into a room. Then I realized I was comparing myself to Ito and wondered why on earth I would do something like that. Because I'm an outsider like him?
My, you all look rather glum. Something to do with last night's excitement, I presume.
His position wasn't just the result of politics, then. There would be no simply ignoring the incident, it appeared.
No.
Desperately, Kondo's eyes flew around the room, looking for someone who might give him a story.
Sonu, make something up.
Oh, come on, you just totally defeated the purpose here.
What? Me? Well, you see, yesterday... You're a miserable actor. Stay out of this.
Okita's smile was bitter and thin. They sat back down.
How about you leave the explanation to someone who can string two words together, huh?
He looked at Saito expectantly, and the other two men nodded at once.
As you suspect, Deputy Commander Ito, there was an incident yesterday here at our headquarters.
Furthermore, he continued, the situation was grim. Saito then proceeded to outline as much of the truth as he could, his eyes never wavering from Ito's face.
We do not wish to trouble you with such matters just yet, Deputy Commander.
By way of apology, he made a short bow.
If you wish, I would be happy to provide you with more detailed report this afternoon. Oh my.
Ito's eyes narrowed, and he looked slowly around the hall, a mischievous smile playing around his lips.
Very well. I comprehend your situation. I shall look forward to receiving the details this evening.
With another strange smile, Ito stood, nodded slightly, and left the room.
Feels like I let it slide this time. Maybe he just liked how Saito handled it.
What? Yes, Saito had been respectful and, at least on the surface, forthcoming, both of which had likely pleased Ito, but what did he meant by letting it slide?
We shouldn't have let him see us all together.
I looked at him, confused.
The only man missing was Sanan. It won't take long to realize something's happened to him.
Oh. Then Ito had likely guessed what had taken place, but decided not to press the issue. I was beginning to see what Kondo saw in him. There was certainly no doubt that he was clever and observant. Ah! I had looked up just in time to see Sanan shuffle through the door. His face was pale, but apart from that, he looked much like he always had.
Sanan, are you sure you should be up and about?
Sanan's only response was a small, sad smile.
I'm only a little tired, a side effect of my new condition, I suppose. Those who've taken the draught often find that working during the daylight hours is especially taxing.
In other words, it was working. Sanan was already transformed.
I am no longer a human being.
He smiled.
Who cares what you are? You're alive. That's good enough for me.
I could see the beginnings of tears welling up in Kondo's eyes, but the rest of the men were more reserved. Oh, he's so emotional. They were happy to see their friend alive, but what had his resurrection cost him?
So, your arm's better, I'm guessing?
I haven't fully recovered yet, so I would withhold any final judgment, but...
He lifted his arm, the arm that the day before had hung limp at his side, and flexed his hand.
It seems to have healed. At the very least, it is no longer a hindrance.
Thank goodness. If he had gone through all of that just to find his arm still lame and useless.
You can't go out in the sun though, right? Will you still be able to fight with us?
If daylight drained one's energy, then living a normal life would be difficult enough, never mind fighting alongside the Shinsengumi. Well, I guess it's better to be able to fight at night than not at all.
Best you simply say I died.
His voice was calm, almost careless.
From now on, I will serve in the Corps, to remind them, and us, that success is possible.
What? Have you lost your mind? Do you know what you're saying?
Of course I do. Do you, Nagakura? The Shogun had ordered us to keep this thing a secret.
Nagakura fell silent.
If I, die, the Shogun's secret remains so.
Leaving no room for argument, he continued.
Besides, if the side effects can be managed or even removed, then what reason do we have not to use it?
To a man, they were against his idea, though none of them said anything. Who would want to consign a friend to a life of secrecy lived in the shadows?
We were given this task by the Shogun himself.
Sanan's suggestion might not have been pleasant, but it was logical. The drug was dangerous, yes, but if it could be refined, the side effects removed, it would be a powerful tool. A powerful weapon.
I suppose this is our only choice.
And with his words, it was decided.
Well, this is what you asked for, Sanan. Make sure you don't screw it up.
It wasn't exactly a vote of confidence, but Sanan simply responded with a smile.
This means moving to a new location isn't something we can put off any longer. If we're going to hide Sanan from Ito and his men, then we need more space. This place won't cut it.
Saito nodded.
If we intend to begin research again, then a move is even more urgent.
Sanan's fate decided, they turned to a discussion of where they might make their new headquarters. Whatever my status was, it did not extend to being included in that discussion. Living with the Shinsengumi for the past year has been quite an experience. Lately I'd felt that perhaps it wasn't so bad, and that my life had become almost fun. But the truth I couldn't escape was that I was only valuable to them because of my connection to my father, a truth they made painfully clear to me. These men had lived with one another for years. My own time with them amounted to little more than a drop in the bucket. They had no reason to treat me as anything more than a casual prisoner, or at best a serving girl. I'd reminded myself of that countless times, but it only served to deepen my sense of loneliness. June 1865, This is progressing so slowly. It had been 3 months since we moved to the headquarters in Nishi Hongwanji. There's a lot more room, but more room meant, well, farther to walk. I'd walked through it nearly every day for several weeks, and I was finally beginning to learn my way around. As I turned a corner near the back of the compound, I caught sight of someone sitting in the shadows. There you are, Sanin. Your food's ready.
Oh, hello. Thank you.
Even though he's in the shade, shouldn't he not be outside in this daytime? The snow had disappeared, the cherry blossoms had bloomed and fled, and now the swallows and the heat had come. Sanin and I exchanged a pair of smiles, and held out my hands to let the breeze brush across them. It's really gotten warm lately.
Yes, it has. Unfortunately, the heat and the sunlight aren't particularly pleasant for me.
Really? I hadn't thought that the sun was particularly strong that day, but to Sanin, who had to hide in the shadows or stay indoors during the day, it must have seemed unbearable. Oh. The night he'd changed, Sanin's hair had turned white, and in his eyes had been a thirst for blood. But to look at his peaceful smile now, it was hard to imagine that night had even been real. If someone had taken me aside and said it had all been a bad dream, I would have believed them. It hadn't been a dream, though, and now Sanin spends his days avoiding being seen and hiding from the sunlight. The Shinsengumi's greatest secret. Here it is. For just a moment, the sun lit on Sanin's hair. I don't know if it was a trick of the light or simply my mind being fooled, but at that moment his hair was a brilliant white. Yep. Ah! That's the drug.
Is something the matter? You look as though you've seen a ghost, which I hardly feel is polite.
Oh, no, nothing at all. He looked perfectly normal now, of course. Surely, I thought, I must have simply imagined it. Even if I had, there was no denying that he was the same man who had gone mad with bloodlust. It was unnerving. I didn't even think I saw him that night, actually. Heisuke and I made our way through the crowded as usual streets of Kyoto at a brisk pace. You know, I haven't gone out on patrol with you in quite a while, Heisuke.
Huh? Oh yeah, I guess not. Edo had me pretty busy. Shin and Sana didn't bug you while I was gone, did they?
No, they were perfect gentlemen. I'm fine. I couldn't manage to suppress a short giggle. They look out for me when we're out on patrol, but I still haven't found any information about my father, though.
Yeah, I stopped by your place in Edo after you told me where to find it, but
He couldn't seem to find the words he was looking for, and instead kicked a clump of dirt in frustration. Oh, well, thank you for taking time to look anyway. Heisuke looked up in time to see my face fall and gave me a good-natured pat on the shoulder.
Come on, cheer up. Who knows, he might just pop up someday.
You're right. Besides, you're all helping me look, so I gotta find him sooner or later. What about you? You haven't been back to Kyoto in a while.
Well, I sort of feel like the town has changed. So have the people.
Heisuke? The smile I put on to cheer me up a moment ago was gone. Nostalgia and melancholy weren't like him.
Huh?
Heisuke's head jerked up a fraction of a degree, and he looked across the street. He stood up on his toes and waved.
Hey, Soji, find anything over there?
Nope, everything's normal.
Okita was out on patrol as well, although his route took him through a different part of the city than ours. He gave me a short nod of acknowledgement, then looked back toward Heisuke with a snicker.
Well, normal now at least. I'm sure things will pick up once the shogunate gets here.
The shogunate's coming to visit Kyoto?
Yup. It's got Kondo all worked up too.
If the shogunate was visiting, that was a chance for the Shinsengumi to be noticed. Kondo's reaction to that possibility was easy to imagine. I giggled.
Oh yeah? Yeah, I bet he is.
That didn't seem like Heisuke. Had something happened that I didn't know about? I looked over to Okita, hoping that he might help, but... Okita, are you alright? His face was tight with pain, and his cough was getting worse. He glanced up, but his gaze swept past me and across the street. His eyes narrowed at something behind me, and I turned in time to see a Ronin stumble backward.
Whoa, whoa, what do you mean, no?
Stop it! Let go of me!
We're patriots fighting every day to kick those damn foreigners out of our country. The least you could do is give us a little booze, or maybe even a little company.
Across the street, a clump of men, perhaps 3 or 4, were harassing a young girl. I didn't even know what they were up to, but it didn't look pleasant. We have to help her! I felt Heisuke tense up next to me.
I know. Stay here, Chizuru.
Before he could finish, a flash of blue cloth shot past us, toward the dangerous knot of men. That's Soji.
Well, well, well. Guess being a patriot doesn't mean what it used to, if we've got men like you throwing it around.
The usual crowds shuffled away from Okita and the men as quickly as they could. None of them wanted to be near once the words were put away and swords unsheathed. The Ronin's eyes found Okita's jacket, and the men stiffened.
You're one of those Shinsengumi fellas, ain't you? Huh, you must be the brains. So, tell me, Chief, what's it gonna be?
His lips curled back in a predatory smile as his hands fell to the haft of his sword. There was no mirth in that rictus grin, and the Ronin's faces abruptly grew several shades paler. They were only somewhat deflated, however, not entirely punctured, and the ringleader male made one more attempt.
God damn it, get out of here, you brown-nosing son of a bitch! Shut up! If you really want to live, maybe you should follow your own advice.
The sight of the 2 Shinsengumi notorious blue jackets standing shoulder to shoulder was apparently enough of an argument for the Ronin. The last of the color drained from their faces, and they turned tail and ran. You aren't going to go after them? Arrest them?
And charge them with what crime exactly? Didn't figure you for the Iron Fist sort.
He was right, of course. They'd had crime on their minds, certainly, but they hadn't actually committed one. Iron Fist?
What are you so worked up about? Never mind, forget about it.
My name is Kaoru Nagumo. Thank you for saving me. I watched as the girl gave Okita a quick bow. She was so refined, so ladylike. Even dressed like a girl, I doubted I could ever be as elegant as her. I'd only just begun to feel sorry for myself when I suddenly felt a hand on my arm. Whoa! Okita!
Calm down, kid. Just come here and stand next to her.
He shoved me next to the girl we just rescued, then stepped back to stroke his chin thoughtfully. Okita? I glanced nervously toward the girl and gave her my best attempt at a smile under the circumstances. The smell she gave me in return was beautiful, but there was something about it that seemed odd.
Just as I thought. They look just like each other.
He seemed to be talking mostly to himself, but as soon as the words left his mouth, I realized what had seemed odd to me. We look like... No, it was more than that. We were too much alike. It was almost like I were looking into a mirror, but a mirror with a will of its own and wearing much better clothes. The longer I looked at her, the more uncomfortable I felt. I shuddered.
Really? I don't think they look alike at all.
You must be blind. Well, anyway, I gotta end this video here. I've gone on a bit too long. And that's all my recordings for one night. I recorded from the beginning until now, though I am actually editing this because I've been having a little bit of trouble for some reason. I don't know. My tongue just did not want to work today. So, yeah, I did a lot of mumbling, and I had to reread a lot of sentences. So they definitely will not all be out in one day. But I'll do my best to get them out as quickly as I can. Well, half because, you know, my sister's laid up right now, and I want her to have lots of stuff to watch. But I hope some of you are enjoying this while you can, and I hope to see you in my future videos. I'd be so grateful for any likes, comments, subscriptions, or shares with your friends to show some support. Thank you so much for joining me, and I wish you all health, happiness, and safety. Dirili signing out. Bye-bye, everybody.